it's so much easier to be successful at something that you actually care about and are passionate about than it is to do something you're not.
Okay, hold on.
Right.
You just blew my mind.
And all of those solutions will still require people until the robots come along.
Hello, friends. Thanks for tuning in to another episode on The Success Factor. I'm the host, Trent Christensen. Hey, in this episode, I interview Shane Clifford. He's a good friend of mine who's also a great and sophisticated and highly experienced professional who manages about 250 software engineers. He's a coder. He started coding when he was 8 years old. He's moved on to head software engineering at a large educational software development firm who works closely with a lot of Fortune 50, 100 organizations. He's a very experienced and educated individual in this space. We talked a lot about AI. We talked a lot about the industry. We talked about automation. We talked about personalities, behaviors, and just managing engineers. And we also discussed his background and his career development and how he was able to get to where he's at today and some of the success factors along the way. At the end of the day, the best advice Shane gave was to follow your passion.
So, dude, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming.
Good to see you.
I know we've been trying to do this for a little while, or at least I secretly wanted to have you on for a while. But so, Shane, what is it you do? What's your title and what's your overall profession?
I am currently a senior director of engineering at an educational software company. That means I manage about 100 to 150 engineers, depending on the time of year, and don't really get to write much software myself anymore.
So you started off writing software then, worked your way up? Or
I
what?
did.
Okay.
I did. I started writing software early in my childhood, like 8 years old, back in the 1980s when no one was doing it.
Wait, you started coding when you were 8 years old in the
Yeah, like
How? What did you?
through school actually at first.
Was it like the Oregon Trail? You're like, okay, I can hack this, so now there's a dead body over here, or I'm going to get extra food.
I was in a gifted program at my elementary school, and we had access to an Apple II computer. And my very first program I remember to this day was a basic program on that Apple II computer where I happened to be in North Dakota at the time. So I wrote a program that was an image of the North Dakota State Capitol building, which is the tallest building in North Dakota, trivia. And
there's not a lot of tall
buildings.
buildings.
There were birds flying over. And that was my, the animation of the birds was like the big thing in the program, other than just drawing all the pixels to put the building on the screen.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
So that was then. And then I had an uncle who happened to do a dual major that included computer science. And he had a Mac computer a few years later that I learned a better language on called Pascal. And that was like really, I just fell in love with it. I did not know it was going to be my career at the time. And in fact, went off to college not even knowing it was going to be my career. I had parents who did not at the time think that being a software programmer was a real engineering profession.
Yeah. That's crazy.
And I also had always harbored dreams of going to space and being an astronaut. So at one point I was thinking about going to the Naval Academy, failed the depth perception test, so I couldn't be a fighter pilot. Did not want to wind up on a submarine. So I went into aerospace engineering instead. But my first year of college, I was spending all of my time in the computer lab and basically flunked out, of my freshman year, because I was spending all my time playing with computers and programming them and doing none of the actual schoolwork that I was supposed to be doing. So then I realized I really probably ought to change majors.
That's usually a good indicator.
Yeah. Which I guess if I'm thinking about success, is kind of the theme of this show, I think that has always been an important factor in my own success, is just always doing something that I love.
Mm.
right? Like, it's so much easier to be successful at something that you actually care about and are passionate about than it is to do something you're not.
Oh, I totally agree. Because it's easier to get out of bed. It's easier to not take
Yeah.
a break, skip lunch, especially when you get excited about it and it keeps you going.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good way for you to identify what you liked, because you were in college, you thought you'd go down a certain path, you flunked out, and you ended up down the coding path, which is good. You knew that. What if like you didn't know that? How do like, so because I ask a lot of people this question, what are you passionate about?
I don't know.
Many people
I
don't
mean,
know.
I guess you just kind of have to keep looking. I worry about that even with my own kids. I don't, I see them struggle, and I have some adult children now that are almost, finished with college or going to college, and they're definitely still finding their way and trying to figure out, what that thing is. And I'm sure not everyone finds it, or maybe it takes 10, 15 years. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think the important thing is to keep looking,
Yeah.
right? But I think there's always some, everyone has probably something that brings them joy, and it's like mine, I happen to be lucky in that this thing that brought me joy was also a very easy way to like make money and have a career, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was like the right place at the right time. I decided I loved programming computers in the early 90s, right? Like, what better time than that to realize that this was a passion.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think everyone can find a thing, and I think that part of what technology has done in the world, and what we see now with the way that people can kind of start up businesses, and really a lot of the barrier to entry to go live your dream has been lowered by technology, to where if you're passionate about anything, there's probably a way to turn that into a business or a career, or find a way to make it a part of your life that is adding value for others and adding value for you beyond just like maybe what you do as your day-to-day job.
Yeah. It's totally true, especially with social media influencing. I mean, you could pick a topic, pick an industry that you like, and go and try to become an influencer and make money there, or an affiliate of some sort. And it's just about like the media content, capturing moments, and recording it, whatever, getting creative and putting it out there. There's so many avenues. Plus, with online education, you can access any type of curriculum or certification or program you want, even just sitting in your home.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. Now, let me ask you this. What type of code knowledge or language do you have experience with? Is the list too large? Or
so many. Yeah, I mean, most of my career, I wrote C++ code or C# code when I was actually actively writing software. As far as like technologies that people will have heard of, maybe .NET, Microsoft stuff. But I actually spent a significant part of my career working on a system that allowed people to create their own languages and do visual expression of those languages in a way that the goal of it was really to open the door to more people contributing to the code of a program than just the software developers. That the domain experts in an area, or the customers or product owners of a particular application, could actually contribute some of their knowledge, because you'd be able to build languages that were not necessarily programming languages, but languages that allowed experts in that domain to express their own knowledge in a way that it could be transformed into code.
That's crazy. I think my head just blew up just a little bit. But the only thing I thought of when you went on this cool, awesome, like exploration, blow trends mind rant is things change so fast. How do you keep up with all the new tech? Where are things going? How do you, what's your continuing education regimen like?
Um, as a manager these days of other software developers, it's really focused on the broader technology trends and the process of creating software, right? So it's more about finding ways to improve the efficiency of teams
Yeah.
and the efficiency of translating what the business needs into software development output, right? Into code, into the things that we create. So, looking at ways to improve how we build the code, looking at ways to improve how developers work together, especially in a mostly remote environment that we have now. Finding ways to do some of the things that came naturally in the office. There's, principles like something we call pair programming, where people sit next to each other and write code together. A little more challenging when you actually have to go find tools that allow you to do that, where people are able to effectively replicate that while sitting in separate places. Zoom just isn't a super effective thing for a lot of that kind of really tight collaboration. But we've adapted and we've found ways to do it, and there's a lot of great tools out there that are helping people to do those kind of things. And it's just, staying on top of that and learning about those things, learning about those different process improvements and growing from that, and really fostering communication amongst the team and looking for the team to contribute what they learn back to the rest of the organization is another big piece of it.
Is it what is the job market or your industry like from a skill set demand perspective? Do you have attrition issues? Are you constantly getting poached? Are people constantly getting pay increases because the demand's so high? What's it like?
It's been a real roller coaster over the last couple of years. Early in the pandemic was a huge boom of now everyone's remote, so the whole world became a level playing field, right? So suddenly companies that were willing to pay anything were able to get anyone, right? Because they were no longer asking them to relocate. They were no longer having to invest in, an office space for that person. It really opened the doors to people, with high skills demanding high salaries, and the job market became super competitive. As we've seen with some of the news reports of late, that has sort of run dry now, and a lot of the big players in the industry did begin to lay people off, and the job market has really shifted. So last year, if I posted a position on my team, I might have gotten 2 or 3 applicants a week, maybe less.
Wow.
Frequently, most of those applications would even be coming from other countries and needing H-1B or, some other visa support to take the position. I opened a couple of positions a few weeks ago and literally had hundreds of applications overnight. So the job market has definitely shifted. There are definitely a lot of people looking. I'm not sure what that means for what the employment levels currently are, or if it's just a change in people's perception of market and job security, and that they are, more actively looking to change positions and kind of more willing to maybe entertain sort of a mid-level employer like the one I am at versus, one of the big tech players. Now that those big tech players have shown themselves to sort of not be the safe harbor that many people thought they were. For a long time, if you went to one of those big companies, the Google, the Amazon, the Facebook, the Microsoft, if you did your job, you never worried that you were going to lose your job, right? Like, it was definitely only the extreme underperformers whose job security was not there. Now that's been rocked, right? So the people in the industry, I think, are more open to looking at other employment because there's not this sense of like, oh, this is where I can go to just have all the job security I need. And so they're more willing to look around, I think. But there are also just, I think, a lot more people looking or in need of a job right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think there's a factor of these tech giants laying off engineers, coders, cutting back, and so there's a larger available pool?
There definitely is a larger available pool. Interestingly, I've seen many of the people that are applying for my positions still have a job. And I mean, those are usually the people.
Well, would you
want.
know? Because sometimes when they severance people, they keep you on the books for like 6 months or 12 months.
I wouldn't necessarily know, but
and maybe they don't update their job, right?
But when
like
I mean, the people that I've spoken to, and I mean, I'm taking it at face value that they're not lying to me, and usually people don't, and a lot of times I can tell when they are. I've interviewed people enough. I've probably done thousands of job interviews over the years at this point. You start to learn how to tell when people are like really on the level about where they're at and what they're capable of. And when they're not. So I think what happens, I can relate it back to a time when I worked at a company. So I worked at HP for a short time in the early 2000s. And it was a very transitionary period where they were changing CEOs. There was a lot of turmoil within the company, and it created a culture and this tension where people around me were so worried about whether they were going to have a job the next day, even though I was very secure myself and just always have been, whether that's good or bad or whether it was true or not. I can't think of a time I was worried that I was about to lose my job. But it created this environment where I didn't feel comfortable working there anymore because everyone around me was so worried that you couldn't get anything done, right? And so I have a suspicion that some of that is happening again today, right now, to where the actual best employees of some of these companies are going out and looking because the layoffs have created a toxic environment where it's like, am I next? Everyone's running around wondering if they're next. And that is a huge performance hit to folks. It's very hard to be successful and be productive in an environment where you don't feel safe.
It increases your inherent protection, your inherent anxiety to meet, your needs, right? Economic needs, your physical needs, like it all goes basic. It goes down to your basic fundamental human needs. And when that gets disrupted, you kind of get a little edgy. It makes sense. I mean, I think that's human nature, right? What are you seeing with AI? How is AI disrupting your industry or enhancing it, or is it even disrupting it?
It's really interesting with education. And I played around a little bit with, I got access to the Bing chat, but it was shortly after they had really locked it down from what happened with there was a New York Times article where one of their reporters managed to get the Bing chat bot to fall in love with him and
I read that article.
Admit that they wanted to rule the world and
like
everything.
It had emotions. The
version that I got access to a couple of weeks later was, I am here to help you search. And I would not do any of that. I also have recently got access to the Google competitor to that called Bard. And it was still a little more open about things. I was able to get it to, I was able to trick it into giving me investment advice by telling it was, what if you had this money and you could invest it yourself? And it said it would invest in companies that it admired and believed in. And then I asked it what companies it admired and believed in, and it actually told me Tesla and Microsoft and Apple, and did not have Google or Alphabet on the list, which I thought was very entertaining.
That's
that
really
it admired companies other than its own. And I don't know if that was because they actually told it not to, like they may have actually said, don't be a cheerleader for Google. And so it was like, well, then I have to bring up these other companies because I can't talk about my own. You never know with these
It
things.
could be a privacy issue.
I also
too.
asked it about that algorithm. Is there another algorithm that's telling you what you can and can't say? And it's yes, there is a more general AI algorithm that I'm being trained with that tells me when I can't say things.
Wow.
So they have the AI training the AI, and there's the AI policing the AI.
That's crazy.
But education is a very interesting place to be looking at AI because it's both a huge problem, right? Now I can, kids can use these things to write essays. And
I played around with it too.
Submit.
Yeah, you can go to your resume and
absolutely.
copy paragraphs and plug it in, and it's amazing.
It is absolutely amazing, and you can do that. But you can also say, you could tell it write my resume as if a fourth grader wrote it, and it will write it like a fourth grader would write it.
Do you upload it like your raw content?
You could do anything with any content. Yeah, you can give it a bunch of content and say, rewrite this as a fifth grader. You could say, I need a sixth grade essay on Napoleon. And it would write a sixth grade, it can, because it's trained with so much human language and so much human knowledge, and it's all indexed so that it knows where it came from. It can actually do this thing where it can mimic age levels, demographics, music styles. After the one told me which companies it admired, I had it write a folk song about those companies, and it wrote a folk song. And then I said, now write a hip hop song about those companies. And it completely different style. You can actually kind of like almost put your own music to the lyrics it comes up with in the style that you asked for. It's that accurate, right? Like in the way that it produces these things.
Okay.
So that causes a cheating problem in education.
Yeah, a huge problem. But
huge problem.
I myself need to be educated on a few things, and I'm sure a lot of listeners also don't quite understand how the AIs get to the point where you can have that interaction. So let's back up a little bit. What's the foundational input to the AI? Where do people get the content to ingest into the program so it can start pulling from the knowledge base and then grow from that?
So they train them with human language, which is essentially all of the written content on the internet that they can get public access to.
How do they get it?
They just start searching it in the same way that Google and Bing for years have just been crawling. They have web crawlers that just crawl the internet.
And they're saving the words.
They're just going to every website and they're reading it. And in the past, that was done to index for search. So they would look at the terms, look at the connections to that page, and determine like how relevant is this to a particular search term, and index it in a way that when I then go search for automobile, the sites most relevant for automobile show up. Now you have an AI doing that same thing, crawling the internet, getting all of that language, but instead it's being trained on the grammar, the connections of how frequently a particular word follows another, right? And how frequently a particular sentence follows another, how frequently particular letters follow other letters.
What do you call that? Is that code?
That is, there's an algorithm that you call it machine learning. So the machine is building this network, a corpus of these connections, right? This body of knowledge based on those connections it sees between words. And so it's just writing down it's just cataloging the universe of words, which it can do really quickly because it's a computer, right?
Yeah.
These are huge computers, like networks of computers. I mean, I'm oversimplifying it a little. We're talking about a room full of computers running this algorithm, right? So they're creating this like connected network of words and sentences and letters and images. And they keep track of how often out in the real world they see those words connected. And so then when you ask a question, they can actually look at at the end of that question, what words are connected to the beginnings of answers to that question. And they literally build their answers from these connections between these words.
And we're talking milliseconds.
And it's, milliseconds.
Because some of these responses are instantaneous, and it's like 4 paragraphs of text.
Absolutely. And it's just following connections, doing statistical analysis, predictions
Yeah.
of what word following that word will make the most sense. And because they're trained using so much English language, just following those patterns through this body of knowledge about our language makes an answer that makes sense. It sounds crazy.
What about actual facts?
So the facts are there in the language. And
So it's using facts to go and spit out an answer.
And so the source of a sentence helps it, right? Like if that sentence came from Wikipedia, let's say, or WebMD, it might have a higher score on some factual scale than something that it just reads from a random location. Things like that, right? And so it can follow these connections between words to produce these different, because they're all tagged, they're all given meaning by the connections to other things.
Okay. Back to your original point, which is a legit concern, and now I have a million questions, which we won't have time to get into all million, maybe just a couple.
Sure.
But teachers, this is a problem from a grading perspective. Is there a way for you to take a text or a photo of it and convert it to text, upload it, and have some system tell you the probability that it was AI written?
There's a couple of companies out there that do this plagiarism checking. We have some relationships with some of them, and we also are, do some of our own implementation of it, being an educational company. There are some companies out there that are claiming to be able to do it in some ways, or they're starting to work on a process to do it. I'm skeptical that they have it figured out already. I think they're saying what the market wants to hear. I think the reality is that it would be very difficult to prove that something from ChatGPT was not actually written by one of the students that asked for it. The only way you would definitively be able to prove it was if you had access to the logs of ChatGPT and saw it there. Like that would be the only definitive proof, because it can not only do this for you, but it can do it 5 times in a row and produce 5 different essays, and then you can choose paragraphs from each one of them to be the one that you turn in, right? You can get super sophisticated in the way you do this. And you can ask for a slightly different style each time. You can do things, you can give it a bunch of stuff you've written yourself before, and then say, now write something similar to those paragraphs about this topic.
Okay, hold on.
Right.
You just blew my mind. Let's say I wanted to write a book.
Yeah.
And I have, let's say, I don't know, 100 pages of draft outlines, thoughts, stories, just in disparate, unorganized manner as the rough makings of a book that I plan on writing, 500 pages. I'm just throwing it out there. Are you saying that I could take all 100 pages, upload it, and say, write me a book about this using this inputted information up to 500 pages long?
Absolutely.
And it will do it?
Yes. Absolutely.
What are people going to do? How do you know if a book is actually authentic? Because there's ghostwriters. All ghostwriters are going to go out of business.
Is it not authentic?
It is authentic because I gave it 100 pages to start it.
That was your book.
But that's what ghostwriters do. All those ghostwriters are going to be out of business.
Maybe they are.
What about screenwriters?
Maybe the smart ghostwriters will start using the AI.
My point is like someone's entire world of communication, written and verbally, can be amended and tweaked and fueled by AI.
Yes.
And then any employer, any potential consumer of your content would ever know the difference.
This is why teachers have already written, not entirely facetiously, do we even need to still teach writing? Right? This is a real question. It's not a fake question, and the answer is not obviously, oh, haha, kids still need to learn to write. In fact, my own son deals with dysgraphia and dyslexia. I'm not convinced he needs to know how to write. He's already amazing with computers. He blows me away. He's 10 years old. He's already doing things that I could only have dreamed of when I was that age, writing my silly program I talked about at the beginning. But he struggles at school, right? Because they're asking him to do these things that are almost archaic in a way, right? Spelling words and stringing sentences together, and he has a hard time seeing the point. And quite honestly, sometimes so do I. Right? It's the world is changing so fast that the education system we have is really struggling to keep up, and needing to know how to produce content like this, to share ideas, to build and create things and pull things together. Like, human creativity is the thing that computers are not going to take away from us anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you look at AI generated text and AI generated, images, it's interesting, but it's not, it's still based on the human work that came before it, right? It is truly derivative, and it's not novel or new, right? The AI isn't inventing things yet. And I do believe that the AI that we have now will help us invent the AI that does invent things.
How many can an AI actually give you an invention?
I think it can help you. It can lead people to. It can help us discover inventions more quickly.
What if I just ask it? What is something that we can invent right now that is a need in society?
That would be a great thing to ask. I
Do you
don't
have
know what it
access
would
on
say.
your phone?
Yeah, I probably do.
I have Jasper. What do you have?
I mean, I could pull up ChatGPT. Probably.
Pull that up. Let's ask the same question.
Something like, if I could invent something right now, what should I invent?
Do you want me to text you the exact same phrases?
Sure.
Okay, hold on. Let me copy that. That way you can just copy and paste it. It'd be interesting to see what happens. Okay, here's Jasper Chat's response. There are so many possibilities when it comes to inventing something to help society. Perhaps one idea could be a device that converts plastic waste into fuel, or a machine that automatically sorts and recycles waste. Another idea could be a low-cost, portable water filtration system that can provide clean drinking water to people in developing countries. Or an AI-powered health monitoring system that can detect and alert users to potential health issues before they become serious problems. The possibilities are endless, and the world is in need of innovative solutions to many of its pressing challenges. So it wasn't specific, but those are three areas that it mentioned where needs are.
ChatGPT is very similar.
Okay.
There are countless ways that technology can help society, depending on the specific needs and challenges of your community or the world at large. Here are a few potential ideas to consider. It came up with an idea in sustainable energy solutions, one in healthcare technology, one in transportation innovation, educational tools, and environmental protection. Transportation innovation, for example, create a new mode of transportation that is more efficient, affordable, and environmentally friendly. This could include electric or self-driving vehicles, or alternative modes of transportation like hyperloops or drones.
Interesting. Is that interesting or what? Yours was much more specific though.
Yeah. And then it would be interesting to continue the conversation. How would I go about inventing a hyperloop? And then and then you could keep drilling in and getting more and more detail. Right.
So you continue the dialogue.
Yeah, you can continue chatting with it and just having a conversation.
That's crazy. That is. How do you input information into these? Like, for example,
just like we just did.
I have a need in my employer.
There's versions of these that you can pay for that are much more advanced than the ones that are available for free, right? There's a GPT that you can go buy as a corporation or professional entity that is able to receive, whole documents as input rather than just what happens in a chat.
Wait a minute. So let's say,
like your 100 pages of your book that you mentioned.
Okay, let's say I'm doing like a risk assessment of I don't know, your company. Mm-hmm. And we're going to take all high risks down to low risks, like critical down to low. And we're going to go and have a ton of questions for each of those risks, maybe basket all the areas of your company together, all the various risk assessments, and have an entire universe of these risk assessments and focus on high risk areas down to low from a maybe risk management perspective or audit perspective. can these organizations go and buy the software and control 100% of what it ingests? So let's say it takes all those risk assessments, let's say there's 500 of them with, an average of 30 pages each, ingest all of that and then go and chat with the AI?
So the AI is already trained on the large language model that we mentioned.
Right.
So then you're going to add to that this private information it hasn't had access to before.
And how do these companies secure that too? But that's my follow-up question.
Right. No, that's a great question and is a very important question, right? Like these things are kind of out there in the cloud. You're not going to get your own copy of it, the AI, but
That's
you're
my
going to
question
give
is,
it access to something else.
How does a company get their own then, so that there is no transfer, uploading, and leaving private information outside the organization?
That I am not sure about. I would guess that if somebody came along with enough money to spend, that OpenAI would help them out.
That's awesome.
And those things will get cheaper over time, and it'll get more accessible over time. And there'll be ways to, put it into a proprietary cloud more easily.
How does this bump up
companies
against...
are getting so much more comfortable with putting information in the cloud these days, though, that I suspect it's only the AI aspect of it that will give people reticence about uploading their documents, right? Like people put stuff in AWS, storage every day. People put stuff in Microsoft's Azure cloud every day.
Yeah.
But now think about, does their AI have access to it or not? Maybe not. Maybe it secretly, privately does. I don't know.
Do they have to disclose that in their privacy?
Yeah. But does it even have, is that access intentional?
How does it prevent from
right?
actually spilling someone's personal information out?
How do you prevent the AI or the software that's running near the AI and doing the indexing from accidentally or otherwise accessing information that it's not supposed to have?
Oh, totally.
Right.
Well, like PII, personally identifiable information. How do you prevent the AI
what
from
if it
actually
accidentally
not
gets access to a database that has that in it? And now it has all that information along with all the other information it's been trained on.
We should test this.
Well, they had an issue with ChatGPT recently where it was sharing the titles of other people's chat histories with the wrong people. Like you would randomly get someone else's chat title history, which isn't the whole conversation, but still.
That's scary.
That's scary, right? Like, that's human developer error around the AI, but still, like, you consider what people have already started, the kinds of conversations people are having with these things and what they're sharing with them.
Yeah.
And then, there's always bugs. And it's definitely, it says right up front, it's beta software, it's an experiment. They're learning, you're learning, you're taking a risk using it.
But this is where it's going.
Yeah.
Without
it's
question.
Absolutely where it's
Pretty
going.
soon these organizations are going to have their own AIs and they're going to upload all their company information and they're going to have amazing KPIs, KRI. In theory, could you eventually have an app that has access to all your inputs, your conversations, your text messages, your emails, your calendar, social media handles, anything that you potentially make a human decision on? Or forget that you're overbooked, forget that you're late for this, forget that there's traffic down the road and the AI knows this and now tells you actually have to leave early for this. Is there a way to potentially have this app in the future where
absolutely.
all these little
that's what they're working on.
Macro and micro data points come out with suggestions like, hey, you need to leave right now because ABC. Hey, you just booked this, but that won't work because you're doing this and you're going to be there versus here.
No, this is what Microsoft and Apple are already working on right now. This is what they want. This is their ideal application of the current AI technology that we have, is the executive assistant for everyone, right?
Yeah.
Executives, right? The C-level folks at all of our companies have people who do that for them, right? They have the person that they're paying a lot of money to remind them things, to do those, to make the appointments happen, to organize their calendar around their personal and professional life and everything in between. Absolutely, AI can take on that role for the common person who's just wants some help in their life that goes way beyond these assistants we have today, like Siri and Google Assistant,
It
and
would be
Alexa.
very
Like
complex.
it's a completely different game compared to those assistants.
Now that you think about it, this is potentially going to disrupt almost every critical thinking skill out there, or evaluation of unique circumstances to you. Could be health, could be investment, could be buying a car or house, or refinancing or not. All of those professions, even tax, could be potentially replaced with
Even
an
mine.
AI. Even
They
yours.
write code.
Right.
These things already write code.
So what happens
So,
in 15, 20 years from now when we don't
I
even...
think people will find a way to continue to be relevant. We already have. I believe that when I was a kid, the experts at the time already believed that when we had computers that could do what our computers can already do today, minus the AI, that we would all be out of work.
Okay.
But here we are.
Because we
We're
keep
not all
changing.
out of
The
work.
change slowly happens.
Right. And people will just find new ways to be innovative, and it will free up human creativity. Again, I come back to the creativity thing. Just human creativity is just this different expression with our different life experience than an AI will ever have. Like it will come eventually that there will be AI that are, capable of ideas. But right now, ideas still live with humans and always will, right? Like, I don't think we will be in competition with AI to have ideas. I think the AI will have ideas and we will have ideas, and the AI's ideas are not likely to be as relevant to the betterment of humanity as human ideas are, right?
Yeah, I
And
think
so-
content's king. And
Yeah.
humans will always create
Right.
and innovate, because that's what we do. We
But
dream.
we can go about solving like real problems too, like the real problems of the world, like, hunger and
Right. Water.
disease, water,
Yeah.
the
Preventative
and the lack
medicine,
thereof,
preventative healthcare.
climate problems, alternative energy sources, like actually getting everyone on those things, like we'll be able to work with the AI to solve these bigger problems, and all of those solutions will still require people until the robots come along.
And then it's Terminator Judgment Day.
Exactly.
And then it won't matter.
The quantum computing, the AI, and the robots all come together. When those three things all come together, then who knows what that world looks like.
And when they start manufacturing like jets and arms for our military,
hopefully they still like us.
Fully automated factory. Yeah, that's when you want to be out of here.
Yeah. Hopefully they still find us useful.
Like, why do we need humans again? It is scary to think
Sadly,
that
I don't think the battery answer from the Matrix is real. Like, they will not need us to power anything. So we better come up with a real reason for hanging around. So
that's true, because they can manufacture anything. Solar panels, they can manufacture batteries. There's power in the world. It'll probably come up with a new way to actually pull power.
And I mean, if there's an environmental disaster, they would be able to like immediately think up a zillion different ways to clean it up.
Yeah.
Right. So
some like environmentalists will go, just had a 50 trillion ton oil leak. What should we do? Okay. Yeah, that's the most logical thing to do. Let's do it.
Yeah.
It'll have like bazillion data points instantaneously telling you need to do that.
Right.
That's crazy.
It is. It is.
Dude, it was fun having you on.
It was so nice pulling up with Shane. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you'd like to support The Success Factor, come check us out on our website, thesuccessfactor.me, where you can actually support us by becoming a Patreon. And that is something that helps us keep going and helps us attract more experienced, sophisticated, and more powerful guests so that we can capture content that's available for you in manners and factors that you can extrapolate and apply into your life. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Have a good one.